It is certainly understandable that the Roman Catholic Church would want to cover up her unsavory past. The deeper one digs into her historical narrative, the more corruption they will discover. And yet it appears to make little difference, either to the Catholic faithful or to the world at large. How can that be? Part of the answer lies in the corruption of the present day. Consider the sex scandals the Catholic Church has weathered in recent years. I'm not talking about a priest or two who has had a tryst with some consenting parishioner. I'm referring to the worldwide network of pedophiles and sexual predators numbering in the thousands that are responsible for the tortured lives and death by suicide of untold numbers of victims who have been overwhelmingly Roman Catholic. And beyond pedophilia, who can unravel the often drug-related, money-laundering financial scandals that link the Vatican monetary structure to corruption as widespread as that of the largest secular international banking institutions? Or the connections between the Vatican hierarchy and the mafia? If the billion and some odd Roman Catholics can accept a hierarchical priesthood that is so corrupt in the here and now, why would anything from the distant past, even the torture and murder of at least 50 to 100 million people, cause them to question the authority of the organization to whom they give their highest allegiance and trust for their eternal destiny? Apparently there is no level of moral corruption from within this organization itself that can threaten its power over its people. What manner of intellectual blindfold can cause this kind of denial? Actually, the power of the Roman Catholic system over its members is something far greater than most outside observers can fully appreciate. It is not the scholarly argumentation of Jesuit priests, convincing them that the papacy is not the Antichrist. It is a deeply rooted, emotionally based concept of reality that is tightly based in the family and community structure. For millions of the Catholic faithful, their only connection to earthly riches is through the wealth and opulence of the Church. The huge cathedrals, often requiring a lifetime to build, the lavish and palatial garments of the priesthood, these appeal to people's emotions and loyalty through the senses, all of which are brought into play. The scent of the candles and the incense, the awe-inspiring majesty of the vaulted cathedrals, and the ornate costumes of the clergy to dazzle the eyes, the toll of the bells, the mesmerizing chants of the monks, the deep and powerful tones of the pipe organs. All of these contribute to a complex emotional heritage. A highly structured system of 7 sacraments bind Catholic believers to a notion of the power of their priesthood that virtually no betrayal of trust seems to have the power to effect. All of these combine to program a tradition of adoration from early childhood, and to this the hypnotizing effect of repetitious prayers and the pageantry of ornate and solemn processions, the emasculating humiliation of confessing one's sins to a mortal man, perhaps even a pedophile, and the terrors of eternal punishment for disconnecting from the Church or disobeying its dictates. It is understandable, then, that millions would never want to question their affiliation with this powerful organization. Most are born into it. Others become mesmerized by the rituals or succumb to social pressure. Some convert to acquire political advantage. They all submit to the power of the priesthood. To question that authority becomes heresy. Some do find the courage to question and do find a means of escape, but not enough to dent the power of the organization. If the corruption of priesthood and ecclesiastical authorities are not a threat to the stability of the Roman Catholic system, is there anything that is? Richard P. McBrien, a Roman Catholic priest, states in his book, Report on the Church, Catholicism After Vatican II, the real challenge to ecumenism, that affects Christians at the level of everyday life is that of biblical fundamentalism. The term fundamentalism has been given a negative connotation over the years by the media in general. Its actual meaning is taking the Bible as one standard of reality. This priest refers initially here to all Christians of every denomination. He claims the Bible is the enemy of Christian unity. Biblical fundamentalism may be the single most serious threat to Catholic faith in the United States and in Latin America. Here he could not make it any clearer that the worst enemy of the Roman Catholic Church is the Bible. This is nothing new. It has been this way for over 1,600 years, and it is the real bottom line of the greatest cover-up ever. You are not likely to encounter a Roman Catholic who will tell you that to your face, not even among the priesthood. What they will say is that the Bible is to be interpreted according to the teachings of the Church. I was caring for my aging mother, and a Roman Catholic neighbor was visiting with her in the living room. As I was passing through, my mother proudly announced, "Cleo has just finished a 13-week class conducted by her priest on the book of Revelation." I stopped and said, "Really? That's great. Tell me, Cleo, what was the most interesting thing you learned?" I was not trying to embarrass her, but just engaging her in friendly conversation. She said, "Well, I can't recall anything in specific right now." I said, "Was there anything at all that stood out for you?" Struggling, she said, "Well, not really. Nothing that I can think of." Then she perked up and said cheerfully, "But we sure had a lot of fun." I gave her a supportive smile and said, "I'm sure you did, Cleo. I'm sure you did." The contents and message of the Bible is clearly lost on rank-and-file Roman Catholics, no matter how sincere they might be. What amazes me is that Protestants seem to have become just as blind to the history and current behavior of the Roman Catholic Church. October 31st, 1517, is the traditional date for the beginning of the Protestant Reformation. It is the day that Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the door of the Wittenberg Cathedral. October 31st, 2017, will mark the 500th anniversary of that event. Already a gathering is being planned for St. Peter's Square in Rome to celebrate the end of Protestantism. If Protestant Christians have become so uninformed about history and the contents of the Bible, should it come as any surprise that the majority of non-Christians continue to associate God with Roman Catholicism and the activities of that church over the centuries with biblical Christianity? Many comments I see on the internet testify to this worldwide misunderstanding, but I certainly cannot criticize them for it. There was a time in my life that I wanted to know the truth about life on earth, about the universe, about the meaning of my own existence. But I did not want that truth to include anything about God. I had been dragged to church for years when I was growing up. I knew all about God, or so I thought. But one day I stumbled over a nugget of truth, and it challenged me to examine the Bible. Winston Churchill is quoted as saying, "Men occasionally stumble over the truth, but most of them pick themselves up and hurry off as if nothing happened." The thought struck me that perhaps I had been throwing the baby out with the wash water. I could find out soon enough. I decided not to hurry off. I soon discovered the things I have shared in this video and a great deal more. I began to research why it is that so many self-proclaimed Christians ignore or avoid this information altogether and spend their time playing church. I began to see deeper into the nature and magnitude of the cover-up, not only as it was manifested in the past, but also in the present. 90% of the American media is controlled by just 6 companies. Most people rely on it for their understanding of reality. That's a lot of power in the hands of a very few individuals. Most people I talk to claim that they do not trust the media, but at the same time they are reluctant to look beyond it for information. While events of recent years have made it obvious to all but the most careless that there are forces propelling this world toward a global government and global economy, many remain wedded to the idea that most things in the political and economic world are beyond the control of any group or individual. It all happens by chance rather than manipulation. To think otherwise is to risk being associated with that most dreaded of all forms of lunacy, conspiracy theories. You also risk losing your job. 6 corporate entities determine what we see and what we don't see, what we hear and what we don't hear. Select agencies of world power are shielded from public view, while others are exposed only through highly programmed presentations of propaganda. Because of the secretive nature of these organizations, it is very difficult to know who is pulling whose strings, who really runs the show. I'm sure there are some areas of cooperation and other areas of push and shove. Power always wants to be on top. How the pieces need to fall into place for the establishment of a one-world government and what the pecking order will be remains to be seen. The danger of the media is that while most people sense that it can be manipulative, few realize just how manipulative it can really be. And it is not so much what the media tells you, but what it does not tell you that can shape your thinking. Like magicians, they draw your attention over here so you can't see what's going on over there. A story shows up out of nowhere. You seem to hear about nothing else. A week later and you never hear about it again. And few ever figure out that it was a smokescreen to mask some far more important event. Stars and celebrities can be made or broken almost overnight. Or they can populate the covers of the tabloids for decades. Don't be fooled by a happy-faced smile and the hype surrounding the current pope. The media has created him. He's so much different from his predecessors, we're told. He lives in an apartment with other priests instead of the palatial papal apartment. He occasionally rides on a bus with his cardinals. He has been known to ride in a Ford Focus instead of a limousine. He's paid his own bill at a hotel. He blesses the poor and disabled. He receives the adoration of the crowds. He takes selfies with common people and even kisses you-know-what. And there is no denying that he is photogenic. But notice, too, that the cameras always seem to be rolling when he performs these acts of humility. In fact, the entire pageant of questionably authentic austerity has become a trademark for marketing an image of papal humility. But don't forget that behind the image are the steely eyes of the Jesuit. To judge the character of an organization by the persona of its chief public promoter is a dangerous thing. The papal office has 1,600 years of sordid history behind it. The Jesuit order has nearly 500 years of similar history. My suspicion is that at this point in time, Pope Francis is primarily a poster boy and a pitchman. I suspect that the real strategy and decision-making goes on elsewhere. But he has been a high-level Jesuit, and I'm sure he is very well aware of the nature of the game and the role he plays. He is nobody's fool. He is playing his part with great skill. We are living in the age of deception. Not that deception is anything new, but with our present technologies and the current mindset that it is honorable to do just about anything to get ahead, deception has become a way of life. Things rarely are what they seem to be, especially in the media. It seems that the Roman Catholic Church does not need to trouble itself too much about its past and present indiscretions. A simple but effective public relations campaign is working quite well. Her focus and priority right now is on the cover-up of the future. Even as she is making bold moves to position herself politically on the world scene, her propaganda machine works to make her appear to be the salvation of the nations. We have seen that the United States will lead out in returning political power to the papacy. We are seeing that right now. However, we are told that eventually all the world will wander after the beast. We have not seen that yet. We are told that the world will be gathered under one political power. We have not seen that yet either. We see a lot of movement in that direction, but what it will eventually look like, we cannot tell for sure. We know it will be a coalition of all the kings of the earth under the control of one religious power, the harlot. The terrible natural disasters that we have seen so much of the last few years will likely increase. Economic disasters are also probable. There could still be devastating wars that take place. But eventually things will stabilize under a single force, and all that will be left will be to subdue the masses and form them into a controllable labor force to serve the controlling class.